One of the puzzling phenomena in this context is the intervene or the insist of some countries to acquire the media sources to these nations. Let's say the Syria, for instance. Uh, Qatar and Gulf countries were keen to acquire all media sources related to Syria, even years actually before the revolution started. The same scene we see it in Egypt, even in Balkan. We see the fingers. Here we would like to ask what exactly want these countries invest big amounts of money to get what exactly. So as I said, I don't go against or for. I'm just wondering if these countries are doing that just to support the nations, to support freedom and democracy, which is not really logic, but it could be possible. But when we track the behavior of these countries, we discover that it's not the situation because um, these countries didn't support the nations to reach their goals. So I always adopt Syria as main example because this is what I witnessed firsthand. What went on in Syria? What happened in Syria? A country like Qatar was supporting the revolution either in and long arm of media, Al Jazeera. It created unlimited amount of channels like Syria TV, bought almost all kind of research centers, created some of them in Europe, and still paid to unlimited amount of so-called thinkers or intellectuals who would go from around the world to talk about the Syrian issue. In parallel with that, it supported the military on the ground, like Al-Nusra in Syria. It's financed by Qatar from A to Z. Besides creating coalition with Turkey to enable these groups to go and come and to finance the politicians in Istanbul. All of these efforts. This is puzzling actually. What exactly want this like away from shortcutting the issue, like to say they just play the game or they are just have a lot of money, or no, we need to know exactly why do these countries do that exactly. The same when we go to Egypt, they do exactly the same. We look like, for instance, like countries like Emirate or Qatar buy the opposition, and Emirate try to acquire to pay the media which support the regimes, and they do that wherever they go. Well, let's say they are conflicting about the like trying to acquire these countries, but still we didn't see any tangible result that these countries get. Let's say Qatar, after investing all of this money, whenever the opposition reached very advanced situation to topple Assad regime, Qatar instructed its military arm and other arms to stop. So they are not really interested in toppling regimes, or it's what happened in Syria at least, like they are interested just in starting the revolution and keeping this revolution alive. But whenever this revolution is close to achieve its goals, they behave completely against to stop that, to avoid that these revolutions reach their goals by toppling their regimes. And here is the most puzzling point. What do these countries want exactly, and who move these countries? Because Normally, these countries are not really, they don't have long history in intelligence work or in colonialism, let's say, so we can understand this behavior. These countries are very just newly or recently started to become countries in the name of, in the meaning of like countries. They have like governments and whatever. They don't have any long history in, if such behavior came, let's say, from England or United States, so okay, we can imagine these countries are, they have colonialism goals for age, and they are just like continued what they do for centuries. But these countries, they don't have any experience, and almost they are part of the colonial of England or United States. So do they do that by themselves, or somebody behind the scenes push them to way, or they use them, or they to do what themselves, but the real player is stand behind? This is another question. Actually, this rule sometimes was appreciated actually by some nations who just read the titles without going through the text. So whenever they hear of Turkey supporting Hamas or Palestinians, Qatar is supporting the Syrian revolution, the Egyptian, yeah, they start to applause. Okay, that's great. How great! This is really the country which is supporting the freedom of nations. Some of reaction was a little bit suspicious. Or what is it? Why do they do that? Or some of them were really aggressively against this. What are these countries doing? Especially when it comes to supporting the military or the corrupted military like Al Nusra, who committed a lot of crimes and still without really achieving any of the goals of revolution, like toppling regimes or like establishing new regimes. They were just like doing exactly in parallel with what Assad regime, they were doing exactly what Assad regime did, or his militia did. This I find like actually an essential question, because it's what's going on is not about the corruption or the criminality of these regimes. The criminality of these regimes exists for age. Like Assad regime is a criminal, brutal, corrupted regime since at least like 1970. So we are talking about 4 decades of corruption and criminality. What happened so in 2011? Even these events like torturing children in Dara or whatever, events happened, used to happen for the 3 decades, almost every day on daily basis in Syria. This was completely acceptable, and actually the Syrian people, when they accepted that, they didn't do that because they liked this regime, or they tried before to topple this regime maybe in the 80s and supported some groups, and they failed. And since then, these people like in Aleppo or in Hama or these cities, which is now is described as pro-Assad, but they adopted this attitude because they tried before to topple this regime, and they experienced firsthand how terrible consequences could be. So they decided that no, we are not gonna to believe. We don't believe in the so-called international community or any of these lies, like the support of our brothers, either from the Arabic Gulf or Turkey or whatever, or the West or Europe or United States. We don't believe on any of that, because whenever this regime start to play his dirty game, all of this disappear, and at the end we will be face to face with the most criminal and corrupted, and with a regime has unlimited weapon arsenals which he gets from Russia, and there is no limit to his criminality. So he can commit everything. He can kill million. It doesn't matter for him. So we are not gonna to go on such adventure. And those who promise us to support us and encourage us to go further, they will disappear sooner or later, and that's exactly what happened. So those who paid this price actually are the part of Syrian nation who didn't think this way. Actually, Daraa in the 80s was supporting Assad and their Zor as well. So they didn't pay the price, and now they believed the promises and they went on. Actually, to be accurate, it was not really they believed, or that was not really option of them. They were not really asked, what do you think or whatever. It was big game. The media, the mercenary, some of the mercenaries played some rules on the ground. Then they brought the other who were already ready, because yes, this regime is corrupted and a crime that everybody wish that this regime would be toppled, and its mercenaries and so-called shabiha will be punished for what they committed during decades of corruption and criminality. But the people were pragmatists. They were aware of their situation was going on, and they were aware of the circumstances and consequences. That's why they hesitated, and that's what external sources, especially the media, also the financing, the military people, the military on the ground, the political, enabling some political mercenaries, either the mercenary category which know they are mercenary, they practice this job while they are aware of it, or those category of mercenaries who they don't know that they are mercenaries. And I will talk about that later, to tell how can man be mercenary without they know. And there are actually plenty of such persons. This is another phenomenon I would like to talk about later, to the intellectuals or political or writers or who were completely disappeared during decades without any tools to publish or to appear on the TVs, and suddenly they got the enough finance to go from TV to TV, to write everywhere and to hear their voice to be heard. And as I said, if that led really to the freedom of the nations and success of the revolutions, it would not be a problem. Everything would be understood. But what happened actually, that the nations were slaughtered, the countries were destroyed, while some people continue to pay exactly just these people to keep the nations just alive, that to believe in their that victory is coming. But whenever this victory was close, these countries was not really playing the same in the same direction. So they were exactly doing the opposite. So here is the puzzling, exactly to ask exactly from here we start, what was exactly the game? What did these countries want? What they want? What they still want from Sudan, from Syria, from Iraq? Why do they play? Why wherever we go in Sudan, Egypt, Iraq, we hear these names: Qatar, Emirates, United States, Russia, whatever.